And now I will go to the last point in the working conditions that we looked at, which is the expected duration of a PhD. And here we asked our doctoral researchers when they started their PhD and when they expected to submit their PhD. And the numbers you can see here. And what we found is that this is mainly more than 3 years, going into the direction of 4 years. So the next question we ask is, how long are the contracts that doctoral researchers are given? And what you can see in the figure here is the percentage of doctoral researchers that has contracts that last longer than 3 years, again divided in the 3 organizations. And we can see that this is around 15 to 20%. So there's a big mismatch between the reality and what is stated in a contract. And this leads to financial insecurity, and it makes it very difficult to plan ahead if you don't know if you will get the extension that you need at the end of your PhD. And that's why we advocate for having 4 years as a standard for all doctoral researchers in our organizations, but also in Germany in general. And now, before I summarize our recommendations, I do want to mention that we see a lot of improvements in the last years, and we are already on a very good track. So in 2019, we saw an increase in holidays from 20 to 30 days. We do see a far higher percentage of contracts than stipends. And recently, the Ministry of Research and Education did approve the raise of the base salary for our support contracts from 50 to 65%. But there's still room for improvement. So what we would recommend is to have harmonized working conditions, which don't enable inequalities and imbalances as we saw before. And this means 100% payment for 100% work, and to ensure secure and stable working environments for all of our doctoral researchers, which means no stipends and contract durations that are adjusted to the expected duration of 4 years. And with this, I want to hand over to Isabella to focus on 2 other very important points of our service. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. So as we saw at the beginning of the presentation, we conducted the different surveys with a harmonized questionnaire, and one of the modules focused on power abuse and conflict. So now I'm going to talk first about the hierarchical structure of academia. So if we see in the graph, at the top, we will have the institute director, followed by the department head and the group leader. And then we will have the subgroup leader and staff scientists, postdoctoral researchers, and at the bottom, the doctoral researchers. So in this structure, few people hold the majority of power, and they have a direct impact on the individual career prospects. Therefore, the academic environment is particularly prone to abuse of power, inequalities, overdependencies, and conflicts. We asked the doctoral researchers about conflicts in the workplace, in particularly conflicts with the superiors. 15% of them reported to have experienced conflicts, and only 5% reported. That means that 10% of them did not report the incident. And we also asked about the satisfaction with the conflict management. And we see here that around 35% of them said to be dissatisfied with the conflict management, 20% of them are neutral, and 20 to 40% are satisfied with the report. We also asked about the awareness of conflict resolution mechanisms in place either at their own institution or in the general organization. And for this slide, I'm going to be referring specifically to the Max Planck PhD Net 2019 survey report. And here we can see different mechanisms. These are not all of them that were we asked about in the survey, but here we see the Institute Ombudsperson, General Works Council, external law firm, and PhD representatives. And one thing that we see here is that there is differences according to nationality. So the non-European doctoral researchers are the ones that are less aware of the different mechanisms. The best known services are the PhD representatives and the ombudsperson. But we have to have into account that in general, the PhD representatives have no training, no confidentiality agreement signed, and no real mandate when it comes to conflict resolution. And this also highlights that there are already many mechanisms to deal with conflict and to bring the conflict to a resolution, but mainly doctoral researchers are not really aware of this, mainly of those that are external to the institute and might be more independent. Now regarding power abuse, we asked if they have experienced or witnessed sexualized harassment or bullying coming from the superior. And this is the result that we obtain. And for this part, we refer to experience and witness at least once, because we also asked about the frequency, if this happened once, occasionally, or monthly, weekly, or daily. So these are the ones that experienced sexualized harassment, around 5% of them, and around 9% of them witnessed. And when it comes to bullying coming from the superior, around 10% of them experienced it, and almost 25% of them witnessed the situation. Regarding power abuse, we have already published a position paper, which is called Power Abuse and Conflict Resolution. So I would invite you to scan the QR code for you to go directly to the document. But in summary, our recommendations in this regard are to implement measures for the prevention of power abuse, the protection of victims, arbitration of conflicts by an independent committee, and the implementation of consequences for offenders. The second module that we added to the questionnaire was regarding mental health, and now I'm going to address the topic of depression. For this, we use the Patient Health Questionnaire, which is a questionnaire based on 9 questions to assess depressive symptoms. And this questionnaire was also used in the study that I'm going to refer to now, and they assessed the German population and found that the age group between 18 and 29 years old 10% of them show depressive symptoms, moderate to severe depressive symptoms. And they also found that socioeconomic status correlates negatively with depressive indicators. And here you can find the reference to this study. In contrast, in our survey results, we found that 15 to 18% of the doctoral researchers have moderate to severe depressive symptoms, which corresponds to this upper part of the plot. And this wouldn't be really in accordance to this study. We are aiming for the highest education level, therefore for a high socioeconomic status, and we should be somewhere below this number that we see here for a similar age group in the German population. And we conducted a similar study on anxiety with a questionnaire that I'm not going to mention now for the sake of time, but I invite you to check that out also in our survey reports. Now coming to mental health and correlating factors to depressive and anxiety symptoms, we found that long working hours and little time off are correlated. We saw already there are a few holidays taken, and we work usually during the weekends. There are precarious working conditions, referring to the existence of stipends and the short duration contracts, and of course the cases of power abuse. So in this regard, we would recommend the raise of awareness for mental health in doctoral researchers and to tackle the underlying mechanisms. And with this, I would like to hand over again to Jakob to summarize our presentation.
Thank you, Isabella. This brings us to our last point, the key takeaways. As we have seen, that most new contracts are now being more and more 65% of an E13 of a TVÖD, as well as the fact that stipends are increasingly being replaced by working contracts. We applaud these, but we would like this trend to continue. Furthermore, the average duration of a PhD is around 4 years, but the average contract duration still falls short of that. Last but not least, not just with our report, but also with our reports, but also through other reports like the Nature survey, and also during the Corona crisis, of course, mental health has become a topic that is being discussed increasingly. We have seen the increasing awareness of power abuse and mental health, which leads us to the conclusion, which you can expect, you might know already. We continue to advocate for the things that we have advocated before already. We have seen that doctoral researchers usually work more than 100%, and we think that this should be merited with 100% payment. Stipends are really problematic and should therefore be abolished. 4-year contracts should become the norm, and the topic of prevention of power abuse has to be worked continuously. With this, we would like to thank all of you. We would like to thank the participants, first of all. I mean, we have now 332 people watching us. These are great numbers. Thank you all for joining in today. We would also like to thank our survey groups for doing all the work, all the analysis work, and for all the work they did on publishing our individual reports. We'd like to thank Theresa Kuhl for all the figures that she did for this presentation. Thank you really, Theresa. You were always very helpful and always responded very quickly. And of course, also the N² Advisory Board and the N² Board for founding this organization and for continuously working on it. And last but not least, our general administrations of our mother organizations for all the help and support that they have been providing us with. With this, we come to the last section, which is going to be a Q&A session that will be moderated by Lindsay Bultema, the Max Planck PhD Net spokesperson of 2020. Hello, Lindsay.
Hello, wonderful. Thank you so much, Jacob, and thank you, Isabella, and thank you, Leah. I would like to, everyone, just maybe do a virtual clap for our presenters. And we are within time, so this gives us plenty of time to start the discussion.